Hi everyone, Zachary here from Toronto Qigong. Today I'd like to talk to you about Buddhist Qigong or Buddhist influences in Qigong. Now, before I start this video, I'm going to want to clear up a few things. First off, there was a previous video called Taoist Qigong or Taoist influences in Qigong. This is not going to be a comparison video of that. That may be a future video, however, this is not going to be a comparison between Taoist and Buddhist Qigong. I may mention one or two comparisons, but that's going to be it. Second, this is not going to be an elaborated video in terms of Buddhist philosophy or Buddhist religion. That can take hours, if not days, easily. So this is just a brief summary of everything. I'm going to try and put it in a nutshell context for you. And again, if you want extrapolations, that may be a future video again. But this is not going to be that full educational video packed in 10 minutes for that particular topic. Third off, in terms of this topic of Buddhist Qigong, we're mainly going to be working from Chinese Buddhist context. I know there's the Indian Buddhist context, but I'm going to draw a historical timeline so y'all can have a good backdrop on what's happening in China, how it influences China, but ultimately, we're talking about Chinese Buddhism here, which is a completely different animal compared to, say, Southeast Asian Buddhism or Indian Buddhism. It's mainly going to be focused on this Chinese Buddhism because Chinese Buddhism is what's actually going to be influencing the Buddhist Qigong in itself. So there may be one or two mentions of Indian context from a historical timeline, but mainly understand it's coming from a Mahayana or Chan or Zen Buddhist standpoint predominantly when I talk about this video. So let's begin with actual timeline and backdrop. Buddhism comes in at an interesting time, or exciting time I should say, of Chinese development. China gets finally unified again after the Qin dynasty, which is the first imperial dynasty that unifies everything in China. Before all this, it was all feudalistic monarchies or feudal states. Qin dynasty comes along, reunifies everything, and says, we're one empire, we're one country. We're going to systematize everything. And then the Han Dynasty comes in, which is about the time the Buddhists come into China and start teaching various things. And the Han Dynasty is a pinnacle of Chinese culture, some say. That, or it's going to be the Tang Dynasty, but let's focus on the Han at this point. The Han Dynasty is where Chinese get their Chineseness from, I would want to say, because this is the first time in all of China, when it's unified enough for a long period, being about 400 years, that cultural developments from other parts of the world start actually coming in and trickling in into China. And the Chinese have a good enough grasp of what their own philosophical traditions are that they can start doing comparisons and start adapting them for their own needs. So when Buddhism comes into the Han Dynasty, they're looking at this saying, well, it's a foreign thing. Fine, we understand that. We know it's not ours, but let's see how we can make it ours. And the reason why Buddhism gets a ticket into China is because really, though this is a hotly debated topic historically, it was mainly because of the Taoists actually helping the Buddhists come in saying, we can actually help you because you're essentially what we are, except you're just from the West, being India. So that's how Buddhism actually got its doorstep into China, is because the Taoists were helping them in. Aside from, them translating and doing missionary type works, it was mainly because they actually didn't have any resistance per se. So with the understanding now, this cultural birth seed of the Han Dynasty, Chinese are starting to get Chinese, they're understanding themselves better. And Buddhism comes right at that time saying, okay, this is a foreign thing, but you're going to work with us on this. China starts to actually making it more Chinese, and that's why Buddhism in China is such a big religion or philosophy, and why it's so intermixed with the culture because it came in right at that pinnacle time, right timing, right place. So then, let's go past that significance and progress maybe down 70 or 100 years. Han Dynasty is gone now, or it's about halfway through and it's starting to decline, and then it keeps going. A monk from India called Bodhidharma comes in, and he's a Buddhist monk. He's there to help translations, and he goes east into China. And he starts working with the Buddhist monks and sees actually lots of issues. He sees that a lot of Buddhist monks are just sitting down and meditating. He says, well, your bodies are wasting. How can you meditate if you have nothing to work with physically? There's nothing to ground you here. So he starts teaching them exercises which are very similar to Hatha Yoga. And when you do a comparison of, say, Shaolin, Kung Fu, or even Buddhist Qigongs to Hatha Yoga, a lot of the physical characteristics are very similar. So keep that as a note, because I'm going to really extrapolate on this in a little bit. And he says, okay, so he starts teaching them, and then because he starts teaching them actual things to strengthen their body, and then because he notices that they can't protect themselves, so he starts teaching them martial arts, we get something called Shaolin Kung Fu that pops out of this process. And Shaolin Kung Fu, from that point on, continues on in China. But it starts with Bodhidharma. Anyways, so let's go back to that one main point I was just saying on, keep a note on how Hatha Yoga and Shaolin Qigong or Buddhist Qigong is very similar. Why? Well, not only because you're working on physical bodies, but now let's get into the philosophy to give you a good understanding. Buddhist philosophy takes on the idea that they're trying to raise your consciousness. By raising your consciousness, you can become the Buddha from a Chinese standpoint. Or from an Indian standpoint, you're getting out of reincarnation cycles, because then you can go to the Pure Land, or you can go to things like Nirvana, or complete oneness and things like that. That's the Indian context of things. Get out of the system is basically what you're trying to do from an Indian Buddhist standpoint. The Chinese don't just say get out of the system. They're saying stay in the system, get out of it when you choose to. That's very much a more Chinese take on things. So when we consider all this, then the whole thing with Hatha Yoga, when Bodhidharma started teaching Shaolin Kung Fu, he's just saying, well, not only are you guys going to physically work on yourselves to raise your consciousness, but because you're physically working on yourselves, then we're going to try and get a certain mechanism to kick in. And this is important. This starts becoming, you use the physical body and you exhaust it and do these really strenuous stretches to blank your mind. And hence we have things like Zen Buddhism coming in, one-pointed focus, or basically by working on yourself so hard you can become a Buddha physically. And this is what Shaolin Kung Fu really tries to epiphanize, is work on your body as hard as you can physically, because then your chi won't only just be good, but it's used as a means to generate a certain mindset, to blank your mind. Because if you work hard enough in stillness or in meditation, you will reach that point of what we would call a sudden enlightenment, or even gradual enlightenment, depending how you want to do it from a Buddhist context. But both schools of sudden and gradual do develop in China. So with that said, now let's talk about what actual Buddhist Qigongs are in terms of systems. The Yi Jin Jin was taught by Bodhidharma, and this translates to Bone Marrow and Washing Classic. This is a particular Qigong that works on strengthening your skeletal system, but also works on your tendons and makes them elongated and works out any tensions that way. So why is this so important? Because the tendon network and the skeletal network is the things you really want to stretch if you're going to be doing hours of meditation. It's not your muscles are going to get tired, it's your tendons and skeletal system that are going to get tired if you're meditating consistently. So that was used purely for as an assistance to your meditation practice. Then there's things like Shaolin Kung Fu. I would basically say anything in Shaolin Kung Fu, being Northern System or Southern System, and its derivative martial arts, which may not be in classified under the Shaolin system but derived from the Shaolin system because of certain influences, those are still Buddhist Qigongs also. Because with that understanding of Kung Fu, it's purely from a Buddhist standpoint most of the time. Don't harm other people. And if you do harm other people, it's just to make a friend of them, and eventually you're going to go out and drink some tea if you're Chinese, or have a drink. So you want to honor the people around you through the martial arts, but this is a Buddhist take on things because of do no harm to anybody, or any living creature. This has a big impact in terms of Chinese Buddhism, because we start seeing this pattern in Chinese Qigong, or Buddhist Qigong, of do no harm to other people. Well, what does this mean? It means I'm going to work on myself and really raise my consciousness enough that I start recognizing the suffering in other people. By understanding the suffering in other people, I start understanding more suffering myself. So it starts becoming a double feedback mechanism. You work hard in Buddhist Qigong to blank your mind. You physically stretch yourself till your mind blanks, and then you hit that still point. We can call that your enlightenment phase, whatever enlightenment means. And by doing that, you start really processing certain things in your body, because you're going to be releasing emotions, you're going to be going through traumas, you're going to be really cultivating yourself, because you're physically twisting yourself to a point where things just have to stretch and release. And by doing that, you start having more compassion for people, because you understand what it means to suffer. And by understanding your own suffering, whatever your issues are, you can start helping other people. And by helping other people, you start helping yourself. That essentially is the distilled summary and nutshell of Buddhist Qigong, all in itself. So let me repeat that, because it's so important. By working on yourself, you can help other people. And then by helping other people, you start helping yourself. This is a very Mahayana, Chinese Buddhist, even Zen Buddhist, being a derivative, Zen being just a Japanese pronunciation of Chan, which is Chinese Buddhism. And it's much more of a group mentality. It's like, yes, you're individualistic, but I'm going to still work with other people, because by helping other people, I help myself. So it's not only, in a way, self-serving. It's self-serving, but it's also communal. And when you look at a lot of Buddhist philosophy, it's very much around that mentality. It's a communal mentality, but then it has an individualistic take on things. So this is downright documented in terms of your Buddhist Qigong practices. And from that point, we have the Yi Jin Jing, any Shaolin Kung Fu's, or derivatives of it. We also have something called Fragrance Qigong, which works on, again, Buddhist philosophical takes on how you release these things. And that would be more or less a summary of the main systems of Buddhist Qigong. I mean, there's lots and lots of Buddhist Qigongs in China. Some of them aren't even documented. But more or less, all of them are aiming to do one thing: strengthen your body to hone your mind. By honing your mind, then you can reach enlightenment or Buddhahood. And by understanding all this is not religious by any means, saying Buddhahood. It just more or less says being a better person, or a higher aspect of yourself. Getting through all your karma, meaning getting through all the junk that you've had on, that you've developed for years, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. Buddhist Qigong looks to really rework the wiring in every way so you can just become a better person. So its goal is the same as, say, Taoist Qigong. It's a different methodology to get there. So, with all that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you. Go to Toronto Qigong for more information.